afternoon, right up and down the east coast of Australia on the Triple M you are now listening to and via the Listener app, which you now have as well. My name is Maroon. Welcome to the Sunday Sin Bin. We do it thanks to our friends at Sea-Doo. No passport, no worries. Get on board a Sea-Doo. Busy show today because we'll just focus down on this grand final between Penrith and the Rabbitohs, two Sydney-based sides, and get the boys' thoughts on who will win the grand final and why. All that coming up. James Graham will join us after 3 o'clock today. Brendan Cowell will join us too to talk about his new book, Plum. And along the way, we're going to talk about the grand final, and more about the grand final. Even so, our trivia today will be all about Souths and Penrith. So let me introduce you to the cast. Gordon, Tallis in our Brisbane studio. Looking forward to having the grand final there, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been I think it's been the best final series that I've witnessed since I've retired. And obviously when you're playing, you're a little bit biased because you're playing in them. But other than Melbourne Storm probably against Manly and Manly again on the weekend, every game's gone down to the wire. It's been edge of your seat. It's been unbelievable. No one's complained about the rules. No one's complained about anything other than the bloody trainers. So I've loved rugby league. It's been outstanding.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful weekend for it. From NRL 360, Paul Kent, you've enjoyed it?
It's been terrific. It's been really good footy. It's a little bit different, I think, in some of the games. We've seen a few blowouts, which we weren't anticipating. But overall, the footy's been remarkable. And I think we've got a really good grand final, really interesting grand final coming up. There's going to be a lot to talk about throughout the whole week, which is always good.
Yeah, Hoops, what about you, mate? You well?
Cracking performance, wasn't it, yesterday from the Penrith Panthers, Anthony? Just brilliant. Credit to Ivan Cleary and credit to everybody involved at the club. I don't think anybody in the game gave Penrith a whole lot of hope in terms of rolling the Melbourne Storm. They'd been such a juggernaut as premiership favourites all season, but they found a way. Their defence was fantastic, and what a game it delivered.
Well, as we open it up to all three of you, that's the thing, though, isn't it, Hoops? I mean, you know, they've beaten Melbourne. The week before, they've beaten Parramatta, and the week before, they got beat by South. So win, lose or draw, the point is they've had a lot of big games back-to-back now, Penrith.
Absolutely, and as Kenty touched on, there's going to be so many great narratives leading into grand final week. Gordie, at this stage of the season, do you rather be battle-hardened and have had that road that the Panthers have got, or...?
That's $1 million question. I was talking to Cam Smith yesterday on the sideline. No, and then back in my day, the week off was a bit of a curse because you didn't know. And then the week off helped South Sydney. Yeah. They jumped out of the block so fast. Manly just couldn't go with them. Like, mate, they were trying and had this game plan, but they just couldn't do it for 80 minutes. They were so fresh. Wayne Bennett had them prime. The week off hindered Melbourne Storm. It was one of their sloppiest performances in a long time. But they hung in there. They were courageous. So I would have said in my area, the week off, I didn't know because you guys used to go, oh, geez, the week off, do they lose momentum? Now everybody goes, it's such a blessing to have a week off to get everything right. So I think the mentality is that if you have a week off, it's a bonus.
Given their error rate, which was just so un-Melbourne Storm-like, though, boys, you know, they also lost a couple of big players, didn't they? Lost a couple of big names, Kenty.
Yeah, that always puts you out of sorts when you lose two players, Christian Welch and Brendan Smith, so early in the game. It affects your whole rotation and what you're doing there, and also just from a psychological point of view, when you're a good football team and you look over and two of your best players go off, and the trainer comes on a little bit later and says, look, they're not coming back, so you're going to have to deal with that and get on with what you've got. It can have an impact on you, but I thought Melbourne. I haven't said this all year, but I thought last night Melbourne really missed Cameron Smith. I think they got to a point where they got a little bit frantic in their footy, and Cameron Smith was always the sort of guy at that point, and the greatness of Cameron Smith was he would calm them down and just get them back doing what they do. And last night, they started nervously. I thought it was a really un-Melbourne-like start. But then beyond that, when the game towards the end, there was passes being thrown that were just landing on the ground. Blokes were just missing their mark. And Cameron Munster, who has stepped into that role as the leading player in that team, just went, I wouldn't say went missing last night, but what he did was, I think there's been over the years we've seen when Cameron Munster starts to get a little bit frantic, Cameron Smith was always there to just calm him down and to refocus him and just getting him doing what he does well. And last night without Cameron Smith, I think it really told on Melbourne. I think just the nerves and the unusual start they had, it all just contributed. And towards the end, when they really needed somebody to settle them all down, there was nobody there to do that. And I think that's ultimately what cost them.
Now, just before we go any further, Hoops, just to be, let me clear this up with you. Nathan Cleary has avoided suspension after that little issue.
Yes, he's good. He's good. What did you think of the tackle, Anthony?
Oh, mate, I didn't think there was anything in it.
Yeah, no, I don't think he deserved to miss a grand final for that.
Absolutely.
That's irrelevant. The rules are rules.
No,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
but should it have been? Should he have been?
No, he shouldn't have been charged. But it doesn't matter whether it's a grand final. No, I heard McGuinness say that last night. You shouldn't miss a grand final over that. Fact is, the rule is a rule. It's irrelevant what the next game is.
Yeah, the tackle was fine, so thankfully sanity's
Cameron
prevailed.
Smith missed the missed the grand final for loading. Like, remember that chicken wing, I think, on Sam Thaiday?
Didn't he nearly rip Sam Thaida's head out of the socket?
That was his arm. Oh, no,
Who didn't want to do that? Mate, he hasn't wanted to. Mate, I remember his old teammate, what's his name? Adam Blair doing it. Like, remember Adam Blair did it in a test match as well. So, Sammy used to wrestle and carry. Sammy had a bit of carry on too, don't I? I don't think it hurt him as much as what the hair was throwing back, and he went back. But yeah, do you know what?
But the rule got changed after that too, Gordon.
Yeah.
And the fact is, even I can remember reporting on that when Cameron Smith got charged. That was, I think, round 1 when he got charged. And it left him with all the carryover loading points. And we remember having the conversation at the time. This could one day come back to bite them because it sits there all year now. And it ultimately, in the worst type of irony, it got them grand final. But and the rule since got changed now, your loading points, whatever the tally is, it comes down 5 points every game you play. So if it happened again, he would have worked it off by grand final time. But the smart play for Melbourne back then was to actually just go and accept a guilty plea, sit out a game, and then finish with no loading. And they didn't want to do that though.
But Nathan Cleary's tackle yesterday, it was just a great old-fashioned tackle where he did land on his back, obviously fast motion. The referee reacts, and I can live with it, right? Because the referee made the decision. It wasn't a bunker, but there's no case to answer.
Yes,
boys, in my opinion.
The other, I just wanted to say quickly.
That's right. They got it right. There has been no case to answer. So we're complaining about something that hasn't happened.
To be clear, there's a photo going around of Stephen Crichton's try, but in the photo he's got a foot in touch. It's a fugazi, which is a fake. It's a fugazi, which I picked up on the Donny Brasco. It's not a real photo.
Fugazi.
Getting back to the game.
I thought you were going to talk about
your rug at the moment.
I thought you were going to talk about that photo that's doing the rounds of you on social media.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not fake, but that's from a long time ago.
Can I tell you what is not fake either? Is for the listeners. Anthony took his cap off today. His hair's got quite a bit longer. But because your hair's now longer, it's actually exposed. You've got a little bit of a ball patch developing in the back of your head.
I doubt that's true.
It has begun, bro. So you've been so proud of your hair for so long. And suddenly it's begun.
The only bad feedback I get is from all you bald blokes when all the ladies in where I live in Little Bay say you look great with your hair a little bit longer. In fact, some of them threatened to call in today and tell you blokes that it looks and I just got off the phone from Rick Grossman from the Hoodoo Gurus who said, let's grow your hair a bit longer and next grand final where everything's back to normal, we get back to you singing at a grand final and he'll put a band together.
Wow.
How about that?
Wow, that's good. What are you going to do? You lead vocals?
Absolutely, mate. You've heard me sing.
All right, give us a little bit of something.
Oh, well, look, I haven't warmed up.
In the second break, listen, warm up.
the
Don't keep
timbre
on
in my
using
voice.
that old excuse.
Can you just go out for 15 minutes, warm up, come back in when you're ready. We'll take over.
No, it'll be definitely something along the lines of Billy Joel.
Yeah, you always go Billy Joel. And then what's your Billy Joel go to?
Oh, you may be right.
Really? Just give us a little bit.
Oh, mate, I can't do myself justice.
You are sounding croaky.
You've heard me sing. You know how good I go.
I reckon you break into a bit of Uptown Girl.
You could do a bit of that. Bit of a medley, Billy Joel medley. Now, back to the football here, boys.
Emails inundated with your likeness to Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova, the haircut, and Phil Donahue.
So, like I've said, mate, the only people that are saying that are you blokes, right? Everybody else.
I'd like to see you and Craig Bellamy walk down the street
I know,
together.
I know.
I reckon if you walk down, if you two walked into Wimbledon, you'd be mobbed.
Mate, the only thing superior about that bloke is his pay packet.
No, but you and Craig Bellamy, everyone would go, it's Billie Jean and Martina.
Oh, wouldn't
All
you
right.
love the folding
Yeah.
too? eh?
Yeah, I would
You
actually.
should go and do an appearance there to pay for the trip itself.
Oh, look, I'm telling you, I'm glad you brought that up, Paul, because with footy season ending, I've got to start looking at how I'm going to make a quid in these hard COVID times. If anything you need done on Zoom or Facebook Live. But, boys, let's get back to the football. Penrith lost the grand final last year. Gordie, as a man who's been there and done that in an NRL grand final, does losing one help them?
No, but it hurts you and you don't want that feeling. I suppose it's more motivation. I lost one at the Dragons to the Broncos, and I was really young at the time. And I always say that I learn a lot about myself that day looking back on it, because Tina Turner arrived in the tunnel and there was so much commotion at the old-fashioned, what was it called?
Footy stadium. Sydney
Yes.
Football Stadium.
And I actually went and opened up the door and saw it was Tina Turner. So I was so young. And from that moment on, I realised the bigger the occasion, I never left the dressing room. I just would sit in the corner and relax and read the program or do something. So I was actually happy just to be there. So, and then seeing the disappointment on my teammates, that sort of lived with me for a long time. And I reckon I didn't perform the best because I was distracted. So, I don't.
So it did help you.
Yeah,
Losing one.
yeah, mate. But I don't think losing did. I think the way I prepared and the moment got
But it taught
to me,
you the
Paul.
lesson. See, I
Taught me
listened
a
to
lesson.
I listened to Nathan Cleary after the game last night, and he was asked about the old lose one to win one. And look, if you've already lost one, then you say, of course, it's going to help. If you haven't, then you say, no, you want to win the next one you're in. But what he spoke about was what last year taught them was about staying in the moment and not trying to get ahead of themselves. They panicked a little bit last year against Melbourne. They fell behind in the grand final, a couple of tries, and they lost their composure. And once that happened, Penrith were not able to get back in the game. So what happened last night, Penrith, in a very tight game, just managed to stay within it. And every time the emotion starts to override you a little bit, they had the capacity to pull themselves out of that and say, no, let's just get back to our processes. And Nathan spoke about how boring that is to actually talk about, and it is. The last thing you want to hear, we just stick to processes. But when you're in that big moment, that's your greatest asset. And the fact that they've got the capacity to now understand that and to actually be able to consciously address that within the game, that's a big, big benefit. And we've seen, that's one of the fascinations of this week with South Sydney. They haven't got there before, a lot of these guys. And the big name player like Cody Walker, who has not really excelled when he's had big games in Origin. But Wayne Bennett has really put a lot of coaching in him to really calm him down and to really just not let him get too nervous and get too far ahead in his head. And I think that's been a big impact on Cody. But the mental game this week is going to be vitally important for both teams, how they handle the game and the week leading up to it. We know that Bennett's going to be outstanding at just getting his team nice and calm and keeping them calm all week. We also know that what's happened there is that Cleary, having learned all this last year and been through it last year, and he has been in a couple of grand finals now, he'll also be better prepared this week. But his players, importantly, will be really prepared as well. So I think there's a little bit out of them losing last year, and I think that's why that thing's around, because it teaches you to actually address it. Let's look, MG, one of the favourites here at Triple M. When Penrith made the grand final in 1990, the first year, they headed into the Wentworth Hotel for the grand final breakfast. It was a Wednesday night they went in. Grand final breakfast was always Thursday morning, so the teams would stay at the hotel the night before the game. These guys walked in, sat down, got in their room, and a lot of them were young, naive kids, and opened up this little fridge they had in there. And this is the early 90s, bear in mind. Opened up this little fridge and found all this alcohol in little miniature bottles, and they'd never seen it before. So what did they do? They all got into one room. They all emptied the fridges out, took all the bottles down to one room, and they sat there drinking them on a Wednesday night grand final because they were just so excited to have free grog. And at one point, Phil Gould, the coach, walks down the hall. He's obviously been tipped off that something's up. Walks down the hall, knows what room they're in, knocks on the door, and they all go quiet in the room, don't want to answer it. He knocks again. I know you're in there, boys. Open the door. He opens the door, sees his team half blind, and he says, "Congratulations, boys, you've just lost the grand final." And he walks out. And they lost that weekend. The following year, they made the grand final again. They went back into the Wentworth again for the grand final breakfast. They went into their rooms, free grog in the fridge, and it stayed in the fridge. And they won the grand final. They learned their lesson. That was only a small one, but it's a popular one.
Oh, it's a massive one. But wonder why why that was his response to it, Paul, and he didn't say, listen, get yourselves to bed, get yourselves lubricated.
I think they were too far gone,
Right.
Anthony. The other thing I know that they did, I spoke to Greg Alexander about this, is they did go out, I think at some point, I think it was the Thursday, could have been the Friday, and they had a really hard training session. And again, this is 30 years ago, so the sports science is much different. They had a hard training session to try and sweat the grog out of them and try and get it out. And that didn't work either. So there was a bit going on that week, but again, they were so excited to be there and to have achieved it that they actually lost sight of the goal. Let's remember Parramatta in the 70s, 76, I think it was, made their first ever grand final. They held a parade down Church Street before the grand final, and the week before, like they hadn't won it yet. But everyone was so happy that they'd made it. They put a parade on them, and all the players sat in the back of cars and got paraded down Church Street before they'd even won it. So there's a whole mental element you've got to get yourself through.
Yeah.
And I think Penrith would have realised the temptation when you're playing a big game is you got to change what got you there. And the bigger the game, the more simple you got to keep it. So, you know, when you're younger, like you think, oh, God, well, I've got to do this. And, you know, and you dream of chip and chasing and you dream of scoring the Steve Jackson try if you're a forward or the, you know, Scott Sattler tackle. That's not the play. And I remember once I was playing in the grand final and the great Jack Gibson came to our last team dinner and he happened to sit right beside me and I leaned over and I said, Jack, I said, do you have any advice? And he just looked at me and said, make your first play your best. And I tried to elaborate. He didn't really say anything more for the rest of the dinner. And
Probably couldn't
for
get
me,
a word
that
in.
was that. Sorry, no. Well, hey, listen here, chainsaw teeth. I was actually quite nervous. But like the thing,
And you talk when you're nervous.
And then I highlighted that is because it sends a huge message to your teammates that you're ready to play, and it sends a message to your team, to the team that you're playing against. And the bigger the occasion for me, I used to work on just my kick chase, like in my brain is kick chase, marker defence, and don't miss a tackle, and the rest would work. And I think the young Penrith players probably realise that because yesterday they missed 55 tackles.
I saw
If you would have said that they missed 55 tackles and beat Melbourne Storm, people would lock you up. But they did because they just kept on turning up for it. So basically they just kept on turning up, and that's not game plan, that's effort. So what they did yesterday was just pure effort working for each other. So that's a side that's ready to go.
Well, they put Melbourne on tilt too, Gordie, because they forced them into 15 errors. It wasn't just all the missed tackles, but that's very un-Melbourne Storm-like. And that 1990 Panthers grand final preparation, Anthony, that was shades of your preparation in the 90s for the I-91 FM Maroon and Millie breakfast show, where you used to go all up Sugar Reef and then all up the taxi club, and then
Get a limo back to
Wollongong.
Get a limo back to Wollongong.
And a bottle of Prosecco and straight on.
Absolutely. Spin the birthday wheel and just... Anyway, boys, we'll take a break.
Spin what?
We had a thing called the birthday wheel, and we had this other thing called birthday balls. It's great days. That's all we need for this show, birthday balls. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and talk about the team that's already won 21 grand finals, the South Sydney Rabbitohs. South Sydney, glory, glory to South Sydney. Yeah, it's good to hear the national anthem played on Triple M today. Yes, well, g'day to all the Rabbitohs fans too in Queensland and in New South Wales. This hopefully will be premiership number 22 for the mighty South Sydney Rabbitohs. And look, I love the Rabbitohs. Everybody knows that, so it's good to have them in there. Get on board a Sea-Doo and discover why Sea-Doo is Australia's #1 choice in personal watercraft.
I've got one for you, Anthony. Are you going to get another Souths tattoo
No,
if they win this premiership? Come on.
No, I don't really even need the one I've got, mate. It was I don't think a man 55-year-old needs a tattoo of his footy club. Yeah. I love
especially
it, but
especially a rabbit on your bottom cheek.
Yeah, I know. It looks good when I do a cartwheel, though. That's why I got it.
It does.
Yeah.
It looks like it's running.
It looks like it's
like
running
a hare.
into its burrow.
It's got long hair. It actually looks like a wombat.
Yeah, well, it was just one of those emotional moments. I was supposed to get a tattoo. Mikey Robbins and Andrew Denton, they pulled out. I got the tattoo. So I love my Rabbitohs tattoo. It starts discussions wherever I go. And at the Mooney Beach Tavern up there near Coffs Harbour, it got me an afternoon of free schooners once many years ago. So it's paid for itself. Now, let's talk about the Rabbitohs into the grand final. This is Wayne Bennett, who everybody's been talking about over the weekend, talking about his time and how it ended with the Brisbane Broncos.
Been at the grand final stage so many times, but after you were let go by the Broncos, how did you? Is this probably one of your greatest triumphs, given what you went through?
I'll let you determine that.
I know, but we want to hear from you, Wayne.
I know you would.
I don't care what I think.
But you're not going to hear from me.
Why not?
Because it doesn't interest me.
But when they let you go, you had to go somewhere. So for South to open the door for you, that was a
That was
fate.
a huge thing, and I will say publicly they undermined me in their conversations with South. So they didn't do a little job on me. They did the best job they possibly could. But to South's credit, they had some people that had worked with me before. They were happy to bite the bullet and give me the opportunity. And I rustled, grow, and hopefully tonight. That's part of the repayment what the team's done, that means so much to him and the chairman as well, Nick Pappas. He's been wonderful, and all the board, tremendous support there. And it was refreshing, to be honest with you. The last 3 years have been as refreshing a years I've had in coaching for a long time.
Do you feel vindication, Wayne? Because Brisbane felt you were washed up.
Well, they felt a lot of things. I wasn't listening to them.
Why?
Because I spent a lifetime being honest with myself, and if I thought I was washed up as a coach, I wouldn't coach. I wouldn't coach another day because I let too many people down, and no one's going to determine it for me. Nothing's changed for me. If I want to coach, I'll look to coach and make a contribution. But I learnt that as a young coach about when you should retire and when you shouldn't retire, because I worked with a coach that didn't have the ambition anymore and the passion for it. But I'm not at that stage.
So there's Wayne Bennett talking about his demise at the Brisbane Broncos and how he's taken on the Rabbitohs role. Had a wonderful couple of years there. And I wonder, Paul, on the fact now that Wayne Bennett is parting ways with the Bunnies, the fact that he's got them to the grand final, where does this position him now as an NRL coach heading back to Queensland, do you think?
Look, we already know he's going to go to the franchise, wherever that is. So he knows that. Everybody else knows that. He'll be the coach. So he'll go up and put his feet up for 12 months, and which would be unusual for him because he's been consecutively coaching for over 30 years now, but he won't have a job next year. He'll do a little bit of Origin, I dare say, with Billy Slater, but it's just going to be wait until the franchise is announced, and they'll come in and get him to sign on, and that'll then create a whole new chapter in this Brisbane rivalry up there, which will be fascinating to watch. Because one thing he will do is he'll be sticking it up the Broncos every chance once he starts in this new franchise. Like, it was fascinating last night's press conference. I'm not going to say anything. Why not? Because I don't want to. I'll leave that up to you. And for a bloke who didn't want to say anything, he certainly had a lot to say because he soon settled into the chair. But the fact is, there's still very bad blood there. All these people who pretend that he'll go back to the Broncos and thought that that's a possibility, it just won't happen. There's just too much bad blood between him and the club. So he's looking forward to looking at, I haven't spoken to Wayne for some time now, but he really is looking forward, I know, to going back. He hasn't said anything publicly about the new franchise, but once he gets back there, he'll just keep playing the Broncos off a break about this and that and all those little storylines planted in the media that he does so well. It'll be fascinating to watch.
And there's a lot of talk up there too, Gordie, about in beautiful Brizzy, about not everybody is a Broncos supporter. No. So Wayne goes up there, he goes to another club. It makes me wonder, what is Wayne Bennett, the value of Wayne Bennett, not only as a coach of a brand new NRL franchise, but also from a marketing point of view?
Yeah, it's sort of strange because we saw Wayne try to rebuild Newcastle, so he's not a building coach. But if you're ready, if you're in the final 6 horses with 600 metres to go in the Melbourne Cup, Wayne Bennett's a jockey that can get you to the front and win you a race. So it's going to be strange. And if Wayne gets his legs up in the air and he can just sit there and, have a bit of a break and then start looking for the players that he wants to sort of, get to a new franchise, there's no doubt that he can be successful. And obviously with the media, I wrote in my column today, I think if Wayne Bennett wins for South Sydney, it's his greatest victory.
Why?
Because I think sometimes with the Broncos there was 15 internationals, or like one year we had 10 state of origin players.
Yeah.
That's really hard to beat. And I think at the Dragons, they were so close. I think Nathan Brown had them, seriously one play away from playing in a grand final. And if that side would have, well, obviously like they did win a grand final, so they were so close to winning. I think it was 1 year and they won a grand final. I think South Sydney, even Maroon, I reckon halfway through the year or even at the beginning of the year, you wouldn't have said that they're going to win the grand final. You would have hoped that they would.
Oh,
Play in the
you
grand
could
final.
get $11 at the start of the year about South.
Yeah.
There you are. So that's great
Which was
odds.
good.
And
It
and
was.
then what they did to Penrith 3 weeks ago, that made there a chance of doing it next Sunday.
Yeah, they're a chance. Look, he's certainly done a good job. And Gordon, I've heard you speak often, and it's one of the stories you've got on that little loop you've got, that little loop you've got about how Wayne starts to coach towards the end of the year, and we saw that this year. We've seen this year's been a Wayne Bennett 101 class. He basically just didn't really do a lot until Origin was over, and once Origin was over, they had a few bad results through Origin, but once Origin was over, that's when the coaching began. Up until then, it was back, keep them fit, keep them happy. But once that happened and they got through that period, it was all about getting players mentally ready to do what they could do. And the best examples, he came out some weeks back and he said that he's been laying in bed at night thinking about how he gets Cody Walker into his best ever team, but he's got Lockyer there and all that. And whether he believes that or not, that was deliberately said to try and make Cody Walker have confidence in himself. That's what it was. It wasn't. I don't think for a minute Wayne was laying in bed thinking about his best team ever, because Wayne always says. Wayne always says
about himself, Wayne.
Well, yeah, he would have been thinking about himself. But the other thing, Gordie, when it's at another time when it's suitable, then he'll always say he doesn't talk about those sorts of things. He doesn't think about those sorts of things. That's all for after he's retired. That sort of conversation.
He's got that lovely Dale lying beside him too, Paul.
Well, that might be the case, Anthony. I don't want to go there, but the fact is, he that was put out in the public narrative all to make Cody feel better, and that's what it's about. That's what the last part of this whole season has all been about, getting them mentally right to get through the game. They just got through on Friday night.
Do you boys reckon Cody got the monkey off his back?
No,
Not yet.
he started nervously, didn't he? His first pass nearly went over the sideline.
Yes.
So he did start nervously, and winning a preliminary final doesn't get it off you, Gordon. He's got to come out and he's got to play well in the grand final. That's
But you know what? There would have been a bit of extra pressure on Cody because Adam Reynolds ran out.
Yeah, there
I was
was.
sitting on the sideline for like Triple M, and then Adam Reynolds must have run out 25 minutes before he did this mini fitness test. And I'm thinking, Adam Reynolds isn't going to play here. So the trainers run out. He did like a 15-minute running and stopping, and had a lot of concern on his face. Then he went to goal kick, and he kicked maybe one or two and then just started walking towards the sideline. They stopped him right before the sideline. He did one more run through, and then he just scratched his head and walked in the tunnel. And I thought, Adam Reynolds has a chance of not playing. Then after the game, I asked him a question on Triple M, and he goes, I wasn't going to, and Wayne just gave me a stern talking to and said, just get out there and make your tackles. So I reckon he's run out there, and then maybe they said, Cody, you've got extra responsibilities and kicking in. Kenty, and I know you go, yeah, but your mindset all day, you're building up to do this, and then Adam's the number one kicker. He's the ball player. Then all of a sudden, he just gets another job thrown on him.
He should have been prepared for that. He should have been prepared for it.
He handled it.
Could have been.
He did handle it. Look, Adam Reynolds hurt his adductor muscle in training during the week, and the thing about adductor muscles is when you're running in a straight line, they don't really interfere with you too much. Where it starts to affect you is when you're sort of swinging your leg in a circular motion, which is what the kicking's about, which is why he didn't kick for goal. And it wasn't until later in the game when his muscles had warmed up that he basically was then kicking the ball in general play. It's as simple as that. But there's no doubt Cody would have been told, mate, there's a risk here. He's not playing. You'll be kicking if he's not. And little Blake Tath, he came in and took over the goal kicking duties. So, look, but again, that's the greatness of Bennett. Bennett just pulls in Adam Reynolds, and despite the fact he's injured and in his own head thinks he can't play, Wayne just simplifies his job. Just go and make your tackles, knowing that when he's out there, that's not what Bennett wants him there for. Bennett doesn't want him there for his tackling. Bennett wants him there to just poke him around the field, get him in the right position for a kick, which Cody was doing, all that sort of stuff. So, but what he did is he took his mind away from his injury, his mind away from what he had to do, and just simplified, mate, make your tackles, which in Adam Reynolds' head, oh, mate, I can do that easily enough. So that's, and that's just, again, that's just great coaching. It's fascinating to watch Bennett this year, the way he's coached this South Sydney team, and the way the game has evolved in so many other areas in coaching. And we've got all these coaches who just outsmart themselves, who are looking for the little edge, the little 1% gains here and there, not realising that this guy, who's 71 years old, who has been coaching for 35 years non-stop, just sits there and knows that a lot of that's irrelevant. All those little 1%ers, that's great when you're driving a Formula One car, but when you're in a paddock basher getting through the bush, you've just got to get there, and that's what Bennett's good at. Bennett's good at. Let's just make sure the tyres got air in them and there's petrol in the fuel tank. Everybody else is wondering about all the little intricacies that can go wrong, and there's too much overcoaching in the game. And Bennett has just got this knack to simplify it and to just actually go, right, this is what matters. That doesn't matter, that little bit there. And if that goes wrong, then we'll deal with that. But this is how we're going to handle it. And when you look at what's happening at some of the other clubs and how they run all these, there's so much coaching in the way they want to play. And then the minute it doesn't work, or it's not coming off, or they're a little bit off their game, or the defence is getting off their line too quick and they're rushed for time, the whole thing collapses. Whereas Bennett's got these really basic fundamentals. And all he wants, mate, feel good, play well, do your best, and it works. It works, and still nobody jerries. Like, there's very few coaches. Bellamy's one of the few coaches who did work under Wayne, who knows that this is what it's all about.
Now, just on, before we go any further, Hoops, let me bring you in. Is there any update on Adam Reynolds? Is he going to play next week? Is that
it's
all?
a grand final, Anthony. So, of course, he'll be doing everything he can. Yeah, he'll play. He'll play. If he got through the prelim against the Seagulls, then there's no question he'll get himself right. He won't have to train this week, and he'll be cherry ripe for Sunday.
All right. Now,
He'll be better for it too, because he got through the game. Like, he didn't re-injure it. That was the only worry for them was that if he re-injured it, which it didn't appear that he did. The fact that he was kicking late in the game shows he was actually good. It'll be sore today when he pulls up, but he'll spend the rest of this week now basically rehabbing it, and then once he gets to the grand final, he'll be in better shape grand final day than he was yesterday.
Now, there obviously a little sideline to all this, a little part of the story has been the Ivan Cleary, Wayne Bennett, the little feud that's been going on. So Ivan was asked about this in the press conference. Have a listen.
No, not I wish so. I mean, Wayne's the best. He's the best coach probably of all time, certainly in my memory. So I'll be doing what I'm good at and staying in the background.
So it sounds to me like he's just going to go quiet this time and let his team do the talking on the field.
Well, he's boxing clever because he got taken to school last time.
He got
by
minced.
Wayne. Yeah, he did get minced. Yeah, he got caught in a gunfight with a butter knife. So.
Yeah, he learned his lesson. Look, he went in there last time with something he wanted to get across, and it just backfired on him. So he's learned his lesson. The last thing Ivan wants to do this week,
is start a public war.
Yeah, and I've said this multiple times, and there's a chance Bennett will do it this week. Bennett, because of the pressure that will come on his players, and particularly Cody Walker and probably Damien Cook at some point during the week, who are his spine. He's got a rookie fullback. He's no Latrell Mitchell. There's going to be a lot of talk about that. He's got Cody Walker, who's still yet to prove himself on the absolute upper echelon. Adam Reynolds, great solid little player, one grand final. Yeah, you can't find a knock on him. And then you've got Damien Cook, who has been a little bit in and out of form. So there will be talk about South this week. And at that point, if it threatens to impact those players, particularly those players, Bennett will put himself out. Okay, he will say something, do something.
What's he bowl? What flipper does he bowl?
Well, who knows? It could be anything. He could pick a fight with Brisbane again. Like, there's every chance that last night that was all about just making the narrative about him and Brisbane, taking it all off his players. And Ivan learned that lesson last time. Ivan had a legitimate complaint, I thought, last time, but he quickly lost control of it. Yeah. And once he lost control of it, he couldn't get it back. And then where he really made his error was he did his press conference first and Bennett came in after him. And Bennett, if you listen to both press conferences in full, they're actually in agreement with each other. But Bennett only got part of what Ivan said, so we responded to that, which then caused the fight between them.
Now, boys, I'll probably have to ask you this again down the track in the show, but it's vital that I do ask you while people are tuning in and out. Let me ask, I'll start with you, Gordie. Who wins the grand final and why?
Maybe Penrith.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've probably been arguably the best side the last 18 months. Last year, Melbourne got them in the GF, and everybody thought that it was going to be Penrith's turn. And then this year, everything was hunky-dory, and then Nathan Cleary got injured, and they lost a bit of momentum. But they've steadied the ship. They've learned to win different. And this young, cocky side that sits and sings in press conferences. Otherwise, I think they've showed more substance in the last month of footy than they have in the last 18 months of footy. I think that they've learned to win a different way. They were winning on their natural ability. They were winning on, what God gave them. And I think on the weekend they won on just pure, hard work, determination, working for their teammate, not giving in, which is a real big part of this final series.
Okay, Gordie's going Penrith. Paul Kent?
Yeah,
I'm barracking for South.
Oh, but you think Penrith will...
for South. Oh, well, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
And I just think Penrith for those reasons, but don't write off South. Like, mate, I reckon it's a knife edge. I thought Melbourne Storm were going to wipe the floor with them yesterday. I actually thought that. And it didn't happen.
Paul?
I think Penrith. Look, based on the fact that Penrith were the best defensive team this year, the fact that Melbourne were the best attacking team this year and they kept them to one try, they were a little bit out of sorts coming into the final system. They weren't terrific last time they played South. I thought that they just got a little bit nervous in that game, but I think that that's really allowed them to recalibrate and go back and just say, you know what, let's just figure out what was actually working for us and get back to it. And I think they started to get back to it. I don't think it's still at their best, but I just like the fact that the best defensive team usually wins grand finals, and it's usually been Melbourne in recent years. When the Roosters have won their premierships in recent years, it's been the best. They've been the best defensive team. Penrith are the best defensive team this season, and I don't know. Look, there's that right edge defence of South Sydney is, I think, a little bit brittle, and I think Penrith will really go hard down that area. But I just think defensively, what Gordie was talking about was all that effort and that. There was a science behind that. They just didn't fluke all that effort. They just went back to what worked. They defended for themselves as a team. They're right back in it.
All right, Hoops, what about you, mate?
I'll say Souths based on the fact that as much as the 34 players who are all involved will have a huge influence on the result, I think it's going to come down to a battle of the coaches, and I think Wayne proves himself as one of the greatest coaches the game's seen by winning this. They beat them only a month ago. To Kenty's point about South's right edge, yes, it is vulnerable and it can leak points, and Penrith are lethal there, but I think the Bunnies can score enough points to trouble Penrith.
All right, Souths and Penrith in the grand final. Dan will call that one for you next Sunday. So maybe you're in a situation where you can't be round the telly, you're working, you're driving a truck, you want to listen to a good call. We've got Dan, we've got the call team on deck next Sunday. And, of course, you can always turn the TV off and just watch and listen to our guys. Or you can get it on the Listener app. Download it now, LISTNR. Safety is a Tyre Power priority. They're open now for safety checks. Tyre Power's footy final sale as Triple M rocks the finals. Yes, indeed. You remember you can always get hold of us at @NRL if you've got anything you want to say to the team. Feach Lamana here from 5 Doc says, hey, you guys getting the summer show up? Feach, I can't go through this. I don't want to elaborate too much on what Feach says, but he says over summer he misses his footy and he's a widower. He's home alone. He'd just like to have something to listen to. So Feach, we're going to try and get this.
There's a TV series.
Feach Lamana. No, I don't know.
Feach Lamana.
Feach Lamana.
I think he might be a Fugazi, Anthony.
A Fugazi. All right, we'll come back to that. That's all thanks to our friends at Sea-Doo. See things differently with a Sea-Doo. We must congratulate the Melbourne Storm in the fair dinkum department on another great year where they won 19 games straight. And it was, as it always is from them, a very competitive season. One game away from the grand final. And, fellas, we often talk about the Warriors having to, be so far from home. But, of course, the Melbourne Storm have been displaced for a lot of this for 2 years. So Craig Bellamy in the press conference touched on that and this particular season in general.
it's been pretty tough going, and not for everyone. Like some guys really like it, especially the single blokes. They're up in the sunshine and whatever. But for some of the families, it's been really tough. And I just sort of probably got a sense a month or so ago that it was wearing fairly thin on some of them. So we've just tried to to keep that going and to keep things as normal as possible, and try and get through to the end. And unfortunately, it hasn't happened. But we've used that word. Really disappointed with tonight. Not so much the result, but the performance. To be quite honest, for me. But having said that, what these guys have done for the last couple of years, and especially this year, I can't be critical of them at all. They've done our club really proud. They've done the game really proud. And as I said, I'm really disappointed this afternoon. But as a bit of balance, what they've done has been quite remarkable.
Yeah, it was great to see Craig Bellamy, and what a wonderful career he's had as the coach of the Melbourne Storm. And again, so close again this year. I guess so, Hoops. Now they lose Finucane, they lose Nico Hines, they lose a couple of quality players. But, I mean, we've written them off at our own peril before, haven't we, really?
Bellamy's shown time and again, Anthony, that he's one of the best coaches we've ever witnessed in the game. He's never missed a final series, aside from the year that they were stripped of their points and not allowed to compete that season. And we saw the way that the side has evolved this year with the retirement of Cameron Smith. And Kenty did touch on earlier that they did miss his big game nerve and his big game experience at times against the Panthers. But the way Melbourne have evolved and turned into this attacking juggernaut, they've adapted their style to suit the new rules. And they're a great side to watch. Like, they're an entertaining, exciting team to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I should have mentioned too, Gordie, no Addo Carr as well next season. And he's going to have his work cut out for him too, going from, the Storm, with great respect to the Doggies. But back to Melbourne, how do you think they will be next year with obviously Finucane's a big loss.
Yeah, but it's, we've seen bigger names than Finucane leave that club. And, I'm talking about Inglis and Smith and Cronk and Slater and Lazarus, and they just seem to go on. It's amazing. Until Craig Bellamy walks out of that building, I will never write Melbourne Storm off. So they're just a side that works really hard for each other. They were so courageous. They were off their game, but they kept on fighting right to the end. And obviously, there's no Nico Hines as well, and he got thrown into the action pretty early yesterday. But they get Coates, and they'll just find a way to keep on. And I think they signed that young Meany, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Nick, yeah. I will never write Melbourne Storm off. Not as long as Craig Bellamy's there.
Paul, I don't know what you can add to this, but we always hear about Craig Bellamy.
Fair enough.
No, I'm going to take it a different way. I didn't mean. We always hear about Bellamy.
Just ask the same question 3 times.
No. This is another question. Question. Thank you, Gordon.
We've just had confirmation from social media as well. Feud Schlamana is a Sopranos character.
Is that right?
That you've just bowled out of the back of the hand.
Is that right? I didn't realise that. So what a coincidence that is.
Yeah. Got a garage full of TVs,
I think. Paul, what I'm going to say here is we always hear about Bellamy, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, Cooper Cronk. Now, not a lot of us just rugby league punters know much about Frank Panisi, who's been there for 100 years as well.
Oh, yeah, Frank's very well experienced in the game. He's been at a few clubs now. He's done time overseas at the big soccer clubs. He knows what he's doing. They really operate on a system which is fascinating. So Bellamy will during the week basically spends all his time coaching, and he leaves all the other stuff to Frank Panisi, the negotiations with players, all of the logistics of what they're up to. And there's a great trust between the pair of them. I know Buzz wrote a column or a couple of stories the other day about the way they work together, and he compared it to Jack Gibson and Ron Massey. And Jack always had Mass as his right-hand man. Mass never had ambitions to be a head coach, even though from a pure tactical point of view, he was far more advanced than Jack Gibson was. But as a team, they worked. And that's what these two do together. They just work together. They've got tremendous respect for each other, and they're able to get the job done. And Craig's got to trust in Frank that if Frank wants to sign a player or he's seen a player or he's been tipped to, Craig says, go ahead and do it. He has that absolute trust that he can get, that he will do the right thing by the club. And it's amazing. We see what's happening at West Tigers, where they're getting pulled apart at the seams a little bit. And at a certain point in their revolution at the Tigers, self-interest became involved. And blokes started to get a little bit nervous about how they were travelling. And when that happened, they began to think of their own priorities first. That never happens at Melbourne. Melbourne's always about the club. Every club talks about it like that's the club mentality first, but they don't all live it. No. But Melbourne do live it, and that's why they're successful. And one of the great secrets of Craig, which is there for everyone to see if you want to look, he's just got this transparency and honesty about him that the players they're confident in everything he tells them. They don't sit there. They don't ever second guess him. If he gets the contract stuff, he just sends them off to Frank. They sit and talk about it, and it just gets done. It gets done like men should get things done. There's no mind games. There's no backbiting. There's no little things coming from hidden spots. It's a very open, honest relationship, and Frank's been terrific.
All right, boys, we might take a break and come back. I think we might be just about ready to do the quiz. The South Penrith quiz.
Is your man Shifty Shafano coming off the interchange bench again today?
No. As it turned out, he was. I've just got confirmation back from the Trivia Tribunal in Geneva, and he has not passed his. He might have been under the influence of some kind of a social stimulant.
Yeah.
So we've had to. No, he won't. You won't ever hear the name Anthony Shafano on Triple M again.
Oh,
Not until he serves
one of
out
your great rorts.
some kind of a suspension.
That's Stewart's inquiry. We
Yeah.
went over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Right.
You got the score wrong, and you robbed Kenty of a genuine chance of victory.
Hang on a second. I didn't. Lachlan Angel's the scorekeeper.
Mate, everything at the Trivia Tribunal
Right, okay.
falls under your umbrella.
God, you can throw people under buses, Maroon.
Right. Well, hang on. You could be talking. You could be talking to
so
hoops.
good.
You could be talking to hoops when you say
Mate,
that.
I'm talking to you.
Do you want to compete
button
in the
pusher.
South Penrith quiz?
Yeah, wouldn't mind it.
All right. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll test these boys' knowledge on the grand final teams. Rabbitohs going for Premiership 22 or Penrith going for number 3 as Triple M rocks the finals. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a big show. We are talking about, obviously, the grand final, which is South and Penrith, which you can hear on the Triple M network next Sunday. We'll have all our regular shows and a little bit more. And, of course, on Mark Guy's Rush Hour, all grand final talk through the week, Souths and Penrith. But right now it's time for this.
Welcome to Maroon's Trivia Night.
Yes, indeed. So just to be clear here, we had a week where I was involved with getting the questions asked to me, and then we had a special guest, but we've just had a flurry of emails. Let's just get back to Maroon asking the questions. We know the questions will be great. We know that Hoops will at least have a crack. Kenty.
Let's just clarify for the listeners. You pulled a rort last week.
Right.
That's what you did.
How did I?
Well, you had some blow-in that allegedly emailed you and unsolicited, and it was all a cook-up. He was one of your mates.
He
works
is a mate
the
of mine,
trivia
yes.
circuit with you.
Yep.
It's all come out in the Trivia Tribunal over in Geneva.
He's one of the great gardeners of that part of the world too, Little Bay La Perouse. People just love using his services of Shifty. Now, all these questions today.
Getting up, old Shifty.
Yeah. We're
All
going
amongst those sand dunes, you never know what you might find.
Absolutely.
All the biscuit tins in your backyard.
One of the great grass cutters of the area. No, hang on, mate. Don't go down that road. Now, these questions are all about Souths and Penrith, the two teams that will play in the grand final. Your name is your buzzer. Question number 1. In May this year, Souths played Penrith.
Dubbo.
And
Paul.
it's 1-0, Paul. Although you didn't say your name, I'll give you
it's the same
a
thing.
caution on the run. Caution on the run there. 1-0 to you, Paul. Question number 2, still on Penrith. What year did they first make...
Paul.
Yes. Paul.
85.
Oh, yes, he's right. He's Rain Man. 2-0. If he gets this one, we might have to have a second place getter.
This one out.
Far out.
Question number 3. Oh, no, I think this is a good one. You might be the only one that knows this one, Paul. Now to Souths.
Right.
The jumpers they wore in the 1984 semis were often referred to as what
Paul.
Yes.
Minties.
Minty wrappers. There we go. 3-0, Paul. So you guys are going to have to play for second
We'll
place.
play for the bowl.
Yeah, because, I spent half an hour on this. I'm not having blow it in 10 seconds.
Half a long neck.
All right, here we go. All right, so your name
Keep
is
on
your
playing,
buzzer.
Paul.
Back to Penrith. What former player and legend of the Panthers was born in Goolagong? Goolagong.
Hoops.
Paul.
Yes, Hoops.
Scotty Sattler.
No.
Roy Simmons.
Royce Simmons. Just see how far you can win by. It's 4-0. You're 4. Gordie's 0. You're -1. Hoops. All right, here we go. What former, I beg your pardon, who played hooker for Penrith in the 2003?
Gordie.
Paul?
Luke Prudis.
5-0.
What
Did
other
you look at
clubs did he
these?
play for?
No, I know you didn't.
What other clubs did he play for a bonus
Dragons, Broncos.
Broncos, Dragons.
Right, okay.
point? And
Canberra?
Raiders. He started.
He was at the Raiders. Yeah.
What year? Mate, I'm going to take a point off you now because you're trying to take this off the course because you're going so bad. So guess what? You're -2. Right. What year did Souths last lose a grand final? What year did Souths last?
Paul.
Yes, Paul.
72.
And that's wrong.
3.
69. They last lost a grand final.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Who did Manly beat?
Man, in 72 they beat Roosters. In 73 they beat Cronulla.
They did too. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
The Trivia
My
Tribunal.
mistake.
All right. Okay. In
69,
2014.
Balmain.
In 2014, who played hooker for
Paul.
South? Yes.
Happy Carousel.
And he's back. He's got it back. I tell you what, he's at 5. I wish I had one
Bully
of those.
Luke was suspended.
That's correct. Mate, you've just cost yourself another point. No one wants your little garnish on the side. All right. Here we go.
You blokes haven't got one yet.
No.
Come on.
No, it's
That's why.
6-0 or something.
Listen, it's not as if we don't know him. You just say Paul and then wait for him to keep on reading.
No, he doesn't. He stops.
In the NRL era, who has coached Souths and Penrith?
Paul.
Yes.
Gordie.
Johnny Lang.
And it's now 7-0. Good Lord. How do you look at yourselves in the mirror? Right, okay.
Mate, we know that. We know those questions.
All right, next one. Last one.
Answer him then. That's the idea of the game.
Yeah, I did, mate. Listen, I did say Gordie. I must be on delay up here.
Mate, yeah, mate.
I've always been on delay.
We've always
I've
been
on delay
we
for
know that.
48 years. But
Right.
it's just a bit. It's just a little bit.
I think it comes with the state you live in.
Hey.
Souths and Penrith have already met in the finals. What was the score?
Hoops.
Gordie.
Yes, Hoops.
16-10.
Gordie.
16-10. So it finishes Paul 7, Hoops -1, Gordie 0. So we're going to can that for next year, I think, that little segment. Welcome back, everybody, in Queensland, New South Wales, wherever you are listening to us today. Maybe you're listening via the Listener app. LISTNR. Download the app now. You get all your AFL and all your NRL as well. Did anybody watch a bit of the AFL yesterday? Anyone watch the AFL, see the Demons win?
I watched
I-
about 10 minutes. Yeah, it was good.
Good 10 minutes.
Look, I'm not a fan of AFL. I just think they drop the ball too much in the game. Like they call it great footy. It's just a fumble-a-thong. And I don't want to really insult the game, but I try to work out where the skill is. And it sounds really insulting to the game, but they drop so much ball and it's so messy. To me, and I used to watch it and think, oh, well, this mustn't be a good game. I've picked a bad one. But that's the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when they take the mark and they do the spectacular marks that you see in the news, brilliant. Like
They call them hangers, Paul.
yeah, well, that's
hanger.
look, that I understand that, but the game is so much ball bouncing around the ground. They pick it up, and they should just get rid of the handball, all right, and just pass normally.
Do they get in trouble
at
if they
least-
don't punch it?
Yeah,
or?
they do.
Oh,
You
right.
do. You're not allowed
I
to
think
do
you're
that.
supposed
But I don't know why they have this concocted idea and why they just can't pass it like a league game. It would be a much better game. But yeah, having said that, I watched a bit of it, and it was great to see Melbourne, who 2 years ago came, I think, 17th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know what Gillespie, the coach, I don't know what he's done to that club. I haven't followed it closely enough. But there must be a lesson in there, how he has rebuilt that club. Because for years, I do know enough that for years Melbourne were like They're like West Tigers gone bad. You know what I mean? They were the joke of the competition and just couldn't get going.
Right.
And then this guy has come along, and I watched the interview with him after the game where he talked about how he was putting too much emotion into the game, how he was basically carrying his divots a couple of years ago, and he got a couple of people in to help him and showed him how to redirect his energy and all the rest of it. So that's interesting. But how he's taken them from 17th, which is second last in their competition 2 years ago, to premiers. They finished last year, I think they won 6 of their last 9 last year to finish the season, and were able to maintain that. So we saw that, say, for the last year, remember the Titans famously went on a 5-match winning streak at the end of last season, but weren't able to sort of bankroll that into a finals appearance this year. But this coach, he's done a remarkable job.
Yeah, well, that's the first time for them since 1964.
You're a big fan of the game, aren't you, Anthony?
well,
did you get Miss Portugal to put the shorts in the dryer again? And
Yeah.
did you do a little cocktail Frankfurts? Or?
I've got some Warwick Kappa shorts that I wore to a fancy dress in 2017.
Okay.
So I whacked those
How
on.
do you get them off?
Oof.
Pair of pliers?
I've still got them on under my jeans. So I did put them on because we're still operating out of the virtual corporate box.
Right.
So we watched the Penrith Melbourne game all up into the AFL, which was absolutely wonderful. No time for a kiss and cuddle, but hey, that's football. Now, speaking of which, back to the NRL, and Brisbane listeners will be interested in this chat. It's a chat about expansion of another team coming out of Brisbane. Now, Brent Reid had this to say on yesterday's show.
Yeah, look, I mean, Redcliffe's a prohibitive favourite, and I'd be stunned if it's not Redcliffe. I think it will be, and Wayne will be involved there. Player-wise, look, they want a Queenslander. I'd imagine that the big three for me are Cam Munster, Kalen Ponga, and Harry Grant. They're the three guys that I believe they will look at and try and sign at least one of those blokes. So I think Munster's the most likely because he's only got 2 years left on his deal at Melbourne.
Interesting to see Gordon that he thinks Redcliffe he'd be stunned, he said, if they don't get this licence. I know Redcliffe are a big, strong, wealthy club in Brisbane. Do you think that's how it'll play out?
Yeah, look, I think so because, for people that live in Queensland, Redcliffe's about 40 kilometres or sort of to north. And you got east, that's 5 kilometres away from Brisbane, and you got Ipswich and with Alan Langer and the Ipswich connection coming out of there, I think Ipswich are all Broncos fans. And I think East, even though they're the same, they're probably equal with Redcliffe off the field, running very successful businesses. But geographically, they're it's going to be the same supporters, basically. We're going to eat into our own. And I think Redcliffe is a fast-growing area, and it'll tie into the sunny coast nicely.
The interesting thing I think about Redcliffe is everybody, part of the narrative about getting a second Brisbane team is people say, which you mentioned earlier, Anthony, was, not everyone in Brisbane's a Broncos fan, they want their other team. But if you're not a Broncos fan and you're in Brisbane, there's a fair chance you have a loyalty to a Brisbane Rugby League team, which is whether it's Wynnum Manly, Redcliffe, East, whoever it is, okay? If you're a Wynnum Manly fan and you're not a Broncos fan, are you going to follow Redcliffe when they come in the competition?
No,
because I don't think that would happen. In Parramatta fans won't go and just cheer for South Sydney this week just because, or cheer for Penrith this week because they live nearby. You know what I mean? You just don't do that.
Who do you reckon Newtown fans went and supported? Who do you reckon North Sydney fans went and supported?
Gordie, I'll be honest with
question.
you. I don't think a lot of them. I don't think they support. I think they're like me. I was a North Sydney fan, and I don't have a team now. I would love to have a team, but when North Sydney got kicked out of the competition,
Redcliffe's your team.
Can we get Kenty a team,
really.
Gordie? How do we get him a team?
But I don't feel any loyal. I don't feel any loyalty, any bond with any team. That's the point. I loved the Bears when I played there, but they were. And
did you go for them as a kid, North?
No, I didn't go as a kid, but because I was there for a couple of years, I just loved the club, and I know they were losing. Hadn't won it. This year's been 100 years since they won their first comp. Next year's 100 years since they won their last comp.
Wow.
So, what's not to love about that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when they were kicked out of the competition, one, I was working in the media at the time. Two, I was I think, 29 years old or something like that at the time. I was too old to form a bond with another team. And I think that's going to be the trick with Brisbane, is for those people who are Redcliffe, not Redcliffe, who are Wynnum fans or East fans or, Burleigh Bears or whoever it is up there, to suddenly ask them to switch to follow a team who for years have been a rival to their club.
Yeah.
For years, but now go in the big league. Are they going to follow them? I don't think they will. I don't think it'll magically just spill over into that. I think that Wynnum fans will say, mate, Redcliffe can stick it. I'm not going to follow them either. Whereas if it had been a wholly new, say, the Brisbane Jets, which is born out of Ipswich, but if it had been them, or even the Firehawks, maybe.
Are we putting the pen through them? They're no hope, the Jets.
The word is that, look, the Jets don't have it. They're not financial enough. They're in that corridor. The only asset for the Jets is
that corridor.
That corridor. But I think the Broncos are going to get a bit of a tickle up to basically get their footprint back in there a little bit more firmer than what it already is.
Right.
And I think there's already been work being done to make sure that they go in and they pick up that area. Because what happened in that corridor was at one point the Broncos basically in a little bit of being nice guys, they left that there for the Titans, and the Titans failed to basically infiltrate the area. So that's why it's basically been seen as untouched. So, and that was the selling point for the Brisbane Jets, is that they had this area. But I think now that Gold Coast haven't picked it up, Jets won't get in, and so the Broncos will start putting their footprint back down in there.
Hoops.
Your thoughts on the Gold Coast Titans season, seeing as how we're touching on the Titans, Anthony?
I think if I was a Titans fan, now that you ask, I think it's a massive failure. I mean,
failure?
Yeah.
They made the finals.
They fall into the 8, and then that was the end of it. So, but it's not up to me. I'm grateful that, that you ask, but
Are you allowed to cross the
Maroon,
border again?
Listen, Maroon.
Yeah.
If you don't hold up the trophy, you fail.
It's a set. It was a
It's
loaded
simple as
question, mate. He asked a loaded question. He got a loaded answer.
Any season that ends with a loss has been a failure.
There you go. Very good. Thank you, Paul.
Do you like that one, Anthony?
I do, mate. I think I'll hang
You
on
can
to
use that
that.
in your trivia contest.
I'm going to use it on Facebook Live when he
Yeah.
leagues this afternoon.
Yeah, they like you there.
Yeah. Just back to the Redcliffe side, chasing Harry Grant off contract at the end of 2022. Ponga has a player option that he can opt out at the end of 2022.
No, he's only got that if he wins the comp.
Right, okay.
Newcastle win the comp.
Munster off contract at the end of 2022. So
No,
Munster's the one.
Munster's signed until 2023.
right.
Munster's the one.
Who's
Munster's the
done
one.
your research, Anthony?
Munster's the one they'll go after.
You've done it yourself, haven't
No.
you?
Yeah, but
Rocket
Paul,
Industries
Munster's already
research.
come out. Munster's already come out and said that he wants to play. He would like to play, not wants to. He would like to play in a new franchise team with Wayne Bennett. He's already on record saying it.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I just got the impression, and he's one of my favourite players, Cameron Munster. He's an out-and-out champion. We saw what he did in State of Origin last year in a Queensland side that everybody had written off. But I get the impression as though the Melbourne Storm might be getting a little bit frustrated and losing patience with Cameron, not because of anything related to his football, but just the way he lives his life away from...
Yeah, he's a wildcat. He's all
away
over the
from
shop.
things.
Look, it's interesting when you a couple of times now. Cooper Cronk's basically
He's clipped him when he's been asked for his
and said
opinion of what he's
guilty
said.
of putting his foot in his mouth. Munster behaves in a very non-Storm way. The Storm don't particularly like it, but his talent's always been enough that they've said, you know what, that's the way he is. It's it makes him what he is, so let's do it that way. But I think at some point when they're losing players and this guy's sitting there and he just continues to do say things like he has been saying lately, like they were about to go into a final series when he came out and said he'd like to go to the expansion team. That's not good for team culture.
No, well, they were going for the 20 in a row as
Yeah,
well, and
20 in
then
a row.
they were beaten by Parramatta, right?
Yeah.
So it's very un-Melbourne, like you're right. He did it again last week, where he said we deserve to be in the grand final, and they hadn't played the prelim yet. Like you don't, it's a rookie error to start talking that far in advance from a player's point of view, and you're just fueling the opposition.
The other thing too is it shows a real immaturity. And the one thing about the Storm, and try and sort of bear with me when I say, I look at some teams and that the Broncos under Bennett were always a team that had men involved. And what I mean by that was they thought for themselves, they carried themselves their own way, but they had that they were mature about the way they handled their footy. Whereas some other teams, you try and talk to somebody or whatever, and they're terrified to talk because the coach mightn't like it. You know, whereas Bennett was happy to let his players talk and say whatever they wanted, and he trusted them to be responsible with what they were saying. And Storm have always been that way too, and they've had these great speakers at the club in, whether it was Billy, Cameron, Cooper, whoever, always spoke with it, in a manner that made you admire the club, and there's a maturity and an understanding and a respect there. And whereas Munster just fires from the hip, and it's not the way Melbourne do things. And to Hoops' point, they've had a couple of big, last week coming out saying they deserve to be in the grand final. Well, mate, you're probably going to regret saying that now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then when they're going for the 19, 20 games in a row to come out and say you're happy to go to the expansion team and play under Wayne, it can unsettle some players, and you could make a case that it's happened this year with him.
He'll be getting a rocket, no doubt. He'll be getting an old-fashioned Craig Bellamy rocket over the course of the summer. And then where it lands, who knows? Because as you pointed out with some of that Rocket Industries research, Anthony, he is off contract with Melbourne at the end of 2023.
Okay, boys, we'll leave that there. Expansion side, it looks like it will be the Redcliffe Dolphins out of Brisbane. We'll take a break, come back. We'll talk about, we'll talk a little bit about Manly. We'll do I Call BS, and I think we'll be joined after 3 by James Graham, and we'll have Brendan Cowell on the phone to talk about his new book, Plum, as Triple M rocks the footy. Welcome back, and it's all thanks to our friends at, Sea-Doo, Australia's #1 choice in personal watercraft. Paul, Kent, Tricep Super, Gordon, Tallis and Maroon. It's time to lighten things up a bit with this.
From the makers of The Earth is Flat and I'm Only Having One Beer comes I Call BS.
Okay, boys, I Call BS. You can do this topic. It can be rugby league related, but it doesn't have to be. Paul, can we start with you?
You can start with me if you like, Anthony. Yeah, I'll call. I was sitting there watching the football last night and the night before, and it was pretty good. Queensland, they're not in lockdown like we are. So there's a crowd there at the game. And then just when I saw the game, sort of the cameras panned back a little bit, I noticed that the top decks at Suncorp Stadium were empty.
Right.
And I thought, hang on a second. We were having a conversation only weeks back about how Queensland's the heartland of rugby league and how Queensland deserve this final series and deserve a grand final because they love the game so much and they support the game so much. And yet here they are, 2 games in a row, preliminary final, can't sell out either one of them. It is such a crock of rubbish.
And what would they say in their defence, that there was no Brisbane...
Queensland no team. Brisbane team. They couldn't get interested because no Brisbane team. Well, hello, that's what it's about. Seriously. I'm so over this narrative that Queensland deserve a grand final. I think that this weekend shows, there's no doubt next weekend will be sold out, right? But there'll be a lot of corporates in there, and how many free tickets are given out, we will never know. But the fact that they couldn't sell out either one of these games over the weekend, and in fact basically had the stadium half full, slightly more than half full, just shows what a con job it is that they follow the game more and that they deserve the game more and that they deserve finals games. Because the fact is, to try and cop up some excuse, right, that, River Fire was on last night or whatever, so they're all going down watching the fireworks. That was one of the reasons given for why there was no crowd, because they went down and watched fireworks last night instead of going to the game. They tell us that there's no Brisbane team involved, therefore... the Queensland team involved in the finals, therefore they lost interest. That's the point. That's the point.
How good New South Wales is, right?
Oh, here we go.
My last ever game.
Here we go. Oh, mate, it's always about you. Can you just get off you sometimes? Please.
Broncos
it was in
versus
Townsville.
The Cowboys. Broncos versus the Cowboys. I had to get Townsville.
Yeah.
That game was scheduled to be played in Sydney, and they moved it so they didn't embarrass you guys, because we would have got about 5,000 people. We got 30,000 last night. Could you imagine the Titans playing the Broncos in Sydney last night? How many would they have got?
The Titans who?
How many would they have got? If the Titans played the Cowboys in Sydney last night, how many would they have got?
That is a stupid statement. Do you know why
I'm asking you, how many would they have got?
They would have got
over
8
50,000
people there.
People.
You know why they would have got 8 people there?
50,000.
Because they're crap teams.
What? If they were playing finals, Paul, you're missing the point.
Well, if they're playing finals, then the whole point of your argument changes, because then they'd be more attractive to play. But you're trying to argue that they're not. They wouldn't have got a crowd.
People.
Oh,
Mate,
come
there was
on.
30,000 people.
Come on. Well,
There
don't
was
tell us you
over
deserve
50,000 people.
I don't care.
Over
You make your
50,000 people in 2 nights.
Make your point. You know what? Keep making your point. The fact is, the hard sell that we had to cop down here about how Queensland love their footy and deserve final series is a joke because you
And I
showed
think
it
that
last
they've
night by not
supported the
turning up.
game
And the fact that
pretty
everyone's
well.
trying to offer up, what was it, River Fire or River Wire or whatever it's called? What's it called?
Maroon was
the fireworks?
Facebooking it
I don't
live,
know, I
weren't
don't
you?
go to that.
Yeah,
But the
River
fact-
Fire.
Yeah, River Fire.
The fact that
That's
they're
a
actually
waste of
selling that
taxpayers'
as a
money, that.
legitimate reason why they didn't go to the footy instead just proves the point. Proves the point. So you know what? From now on, that argument about how Queensland deserve
good one.
they don't deserve anything, mate. Because they didn't fill the stadium either game. So you don't deserve anything. What you did is you paid $4 million for a grand final when if it's held it for 5 minutes, you would have got it for free because they had nowhere else to play it anyway.
That's how much we love the game, Paul. See, so then you're whinging that we're giving you money for the game. Wow.
Wow.
But Gordon,
Okay,
was there a good crowd at River Fire? I don't know.
I don't go to that. Mate, that's where COVID's at.
Right.
No, listen, Paul, you got to get...
No, the word you use up there, the word you continually say that everyone uses, not
We do
just you,
love the game.
is you deserve a grand final.
No,
You
the argument
deserve
that
a
I had with
final
you
series.
6 weeks ago,
And you know what?
when
You
you said
don't.
it should go to Victoria or Perth, I
you say
said,
we're happy
out
to
of
pay
everything,
more, I would have
the
been. I
game
would have
deserves
sold
to
it.
be in New South Wales, and if it's not in New South Wales, we deserve it, and we do.
Based
we
on
have
what?
supported the game more than the other
We
states.
didn't support it last night.
30,000. That's more than the Broncos got for all their games.
Yeah, well, again, you just made me point again. It's more than the Broncos got
Oh,
because they've
okay.
all abandoned
How
the
many
Broncos
do
now. They're not
Cronulla
winning.
get?
All right.
How many do Penrith get every week?
Mate.
How many do Melbourne Storm get every week? I'm telling you, there was more players, there was more fans there last night than most Sydney games.
Gordie,
And
it
you
was a
can't argue that.
preliminary
Mate, you can't-
final last
I
night.
don't care what it was. I'm just telling you, there's more fans there last night than every game. Mate, South Sydney got 80,000 to a march and would get 18 to a game.
Hey, don't bring
You're
South
talking
Sydney.
about how, mate, South Sydney get kicked out. There's 80,000 marching down the street. Mate, they couldn't fill Redfern Oval. They fit like 5,000 people.
Oh,
Get
mate,
off it.
there's 9 teams in Sydney.
Mate, you wouldn't get
okay.
6
Oh,
people.
God, well,
You wouldn't
move,
get 6 people.
mate,
march
we'll move
for
them now.
Gold Coast.
Oh, Gordon. All right, would you like to call BS, Hoops?
I will call BS, Anthony, on something out of last night's game. Gordie, you were there on the sideline. The Melbourne Storm and the amount of free interchanges that they got. And it was highlighted and underlined by the Brandon Smith one, where he clearly injured his shoulder, and yet they utilised an HIA card to be able to keep their interchanges. And essentially, if they'd had another player ruled out with an HIA, then they would have activated their emergency reserve. So I thought it was a little bit of too much gamesmanship on the biggest stage.
Yeah, the NRL's really got to crack down on that. It's getting embarrassing now that the teams are basically rorting the interchange the way they are to try and make Brandon Smith come off, clearly suffering a shoulder injury, and to try and make it out as an HIA. So therefore, with Christian Welch already off with an HIA, failed that. You're getting closer to activating your 18th man. These sorts of rorts just should not be tolerated by the game. I know it's difficult, but when you see players who are clearly injured elsewhere being taken off for HIAs, and at the same token, Christian Welch clearly knocked out, showed signs of being concussed when he went down, yet got up and continued to play on before it looked like the doctor, and I say it looked like because I don't know for sure, but it looked like the doctor in the stand, which is generally a time frame, 8 minutes later, said, look, you know what, get him off because he's showing signs. That's generally the way it happens. The NRL need it. It's becoming a joke.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was funny because I was sitting right beside the Penrith bench, and when they ended up stopping the game because Penrith were attacking the line, they blew up. And last week they did exactly the same thing, but they ended up scoring with a Cleary kick. But like that's the point exactly. And another thing, I think Dylan Edwards got hit high. He runs off, they replace him, then he runs back on. So there's so many things that they have to look at next year because the interchange is a rort. He hurts his shoulder. The doctor comes out, what's 1 + 1? He says 8. You're coming off for HIA. And he's hurt his arm or his ankle. And then players are going to keep on milking it. So that's something that we're going to have to. And you know what? The coaches have to come with it. The coaches have to be in there and make sure that the game keeps some sort of integrity.
All right, boys, we will take a break unless you have something to add, Hoops.
Yeah, there was another I call BS from one of the listeners.
Right.
That they've jumped on social media about Feach Lamana, one of the characters that you allegedly got an email from in your inbox earlier today. It's a Fugazi, to borrow one of your favourites out of Donnie Brasco. He's a Sopranos character.
Well, he probably is, but that doesn't mean someone's name can't be Feach Lamana, does it?
Yeah, there's probably more than
of course there would.
James Hooper in the world.
I know at least 3 features.
Feach
I know at least 3 features.
That'll do, mate.
We'll take a break, boys. We'll come back and we'll talk more matters pertinent to rugby league. Manly, where do they go from here? What a wonderful season they've had. To think they lost 4 games and then got to 1 game to the grand final. So it's been a wonderful year for Desi and the boys. We'll talk a little bit about that as Triple M rocks the footy. Of course, we've got the grand final for you live right across the Triple M network next Sunday. Dan Ganane will call it for you with our team of expert commentators, and we'll have all our shows on air right through till then on the Triple M you are now listening to, or of course, do what the cool kids do and get it via the Listener app. That's what we're all doing.
What will you be doing in the corporate box at Little Bay?
Oh, the virtual corporate box. Well, we're going to have. We've decided we're going to have some more prawn cocktails and some. We've got these really cool party pies, like real expensive party pies.
Where are you getting them from?
I think she gets them from. No, we've got the Garlows ones as well. We always have the Garlows on hand.
Yep.
These fancy ones from. They're joined up at Maroubra Junction, Pacific Square. I think she gets them up in there. So, mate, it's going to be a big day at the virtual corporate, and I think I'm going to do some stuff on Zoom with the Bunnies corporate people as well, and then just jump into a bit of put the the smoking jacket on, the slippers.
You've never seen South Sydney lose a grand final, have you?
No, I was only 3 last because they rarely lose them. So it was only 3 last time they lost the grand final. And I remember, fair income department.
What year was that?
1969.
Yeah, Balmain.
There was a lot of hatred for Balmain at the time, and years later I realised what that was all about. Then, of course, they won it in 71 when I was 5. I kind of remember that.
They won it in 72.
72 was Manly.
No, 70.
Oh, 70 as well,
sorry.
yeah.
I didn't mean 72.
Yeah.
70.
68,
That's the game.
67.
70 was the year Sats broke his jaw.
Yeah. And we've got that, you heard that wonderful bit of media that's getting around of Johnny Sattler singing the Rabbitohs victory song, which Scott sent to me. We might try and get that on. Do you think that would be nice to play that?
It would be
Absolutely.
nice.
All right.
I love how Souths have a victory song that they sing only after winning grand finals.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
What
Which
is it?
one is that? Now that we're all around the bar.
No, that's if they win any game. And the captain declares it a quorum. That's the one they play if they win.
Yeah, right.
But there is one I've heard Sats do. That must be the one you're talking about, Paul.
No, he did it the other night with Scott. He sang it. Scott rang him up, didn't know. Johnny didn't know he was being recorded. And he said, Dad, what was the song you used to sing when you won grand finals? And he said, whatever the name was. He said, could you sing it to me? And Johnny Sattler just broke straight out into it.
Yeah.
Which is, look, Johnny, we all know he's got early onset dementia, you know what I mean? And he's in a home now, and as part of that, often can't remember what was for breakfast or where he put his shoes, but he just went straight away back 50 years to the song they sang after they won grand finals. Magnificent.
Well, we've got that audio. We can always go to it, and of course, the Sattlers are always rugby league royalty, boys. Let's get back to the game that the Rabbitohs won over Manly, 36 points to 16. Manly got a couple of late tries, which probably the Rabbitohs faithful would say they shouldn't have had. But Manly, what a year they've had, all things considered. Lost their first 4, came back. They had their first win with that field goal against the Warriors. Then they get Tommy Turbo back, and then they just went from strength to strength to strength. So. And then we saw the emergence of some young talent, Hoops. Then we saw Dylan Walker, what he's capable of again. Kieran Foran came back into some of his best form.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant coaching effort from Des Hasler, from the way the club began the season, the style of football that they've evolved into, the players that he's brought through. So whether you want to go to Jason Saab, Homoli, Olakawatu, there's 1,000 stories in there in that Seagulls setup at the moment. The form of Tommy Turbo, speaking to Matty Johns last week, and I think he said it on Fox League plenty of times, he hasn't seen a run of form like this from an individual player. It's just been phenomenal what Tommy's been able to do. Look, yes, they didn't make the grand final, but at the same time, I think from where they started to make a prelim, you'd have to say that's a pass mark.
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, one of the stories we often fall to in the game is the impact star players have in teams. Jonathan Thurston, we used to see it a lot with Andrew Johns, what their winning percentage was with him in the team and without him. Tom Trbojevic in the last 3 years, I think it is, the winning percentage is a variant of 45%. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary that he has that big an impact on their wins and losses. That's the last 3 years. That's not just this year. And they started 0-4 without him.
Outrageous, isn't it?
Look, it really is. Look, he's among the favourites for the Dally M to be awarded tomorrow night Player of the Year. It's going to be interesting to see if he can do it, because if he does, he'll be second behind only Steve Morris for the least percentage of games played to have won the Dally M award. So that would just cap off what an extraordinary season he's had.
Has he been your best Player of the Year, Paul?
Oh, he has. There's no doubt he has. But he just, whether he's played enough, he only played 15 regular season games, Gordie, out of 25.
Yeah.
So he's missed 10 games.
You know, and I think the Dally M, they pretty much get it right most of the time. You know, but I just think some of the, I was thinking the other day, I think Tommy's been the best player. I think that he deserves to get the Dally M medal, without a doubt. And some of his performances, right, he's, West Tigers, and I don't want to bag, but West Tigers are playing South, and, and it could have gone to Adam Reynolds, Cody Walker, Latrell, or, Cookie, because no one really stood out, and they get 3 points. And Tommy makes 4 line breaks, scores 5 tries, and, runs for 300 metres and gets the same amount of points as someone that doesn't stand out that much. I think it's been probably the greatest season, even though he missed a part of it. It's, I know Jared Hayne had a run, and, Barbara and all these guys, and they've been in great form, but no one has carried a side like Tommy.
Hayne came late. Hayne finished the season off with 6 man of the match games in a row. That's 18 points.
Wow.
So he just swept home to win the Dally M that year. And Benny Barber had a similar year. But again, look, there's no doubt. Like, generally to win the Dally M, you've got to poll about 30 points. That's roughly about it, maybe a little bit more. But he's only played 15 games. So that means he's had to have scored 2 points in every game he's played, whether they win or lose. At least 2 points in every game he's played. So to do that, it's going to be tough. Like, there's no doubt in a lot of those games he did get the 3. But there's also a couple of games where they would have lost here and there where he wouldn't have got the 3 points. So I can't wait. And Cody Walker played, I think, 24 games, I think he played.
Yeah.
So he only missed 1 game. So
It'll be a development photo, I reckon, between Walker, Nathan Cleary and Tommy. They've all had fantastic breakout seasons.
But didn't Nathan miss about 4 or 5 games?
He did,
as well?
He missed a few,
He did, but I mean, he was very strong. Was he on top, Kenty, or I think he was up there when the voting went behind closed doors?
Can you remind me that if you play Origin and don't play club, you can get points out of Origin?
Yeah, you get points. You get points out of Origin, so they award a 3, 2, and 1 for every Origin. So Tommy would have picked up 3 points in State of Origin 1,
well,
for
example.
example.
Well, I don't know, because Latrell was pretty strong. And
yes, I agree. I think, from memory, I think the votes went 3 to Tommy, 2 to Latrell.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
All right, boys, we'll take a break. We'll come back and we will just have a look at a couple of more things with Paul before he takes off, and then James Graham joins us from 3 o'clock as Triple M rocks the finals. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Next Sunday will be the grand final live across the Triple M network. This is a great one for all you shift workers, drivers. You've got a great, entertaining call to listen to while you listen to the game. South versus Penrith, and of course it's the Rabbitohs. Going into this one against Penrith. Rabbitohs have already won 21. Penrith going for number 3, had a couple of great years. We wish both clubs all the best for the grand final. Now, speaking of the grand final, boys, I've got information here about who will be the entertainment. Australian rock royalty, former Cold Chisel member and solo artist Ian Moss. Just to tear me down about money. And that's his big song, Tucker's Daughter, went number 1 in 1989. Here on the east coast of Australia. So he's always good, Mossy.
Doesn't he sing Bow River too?
Yeah, he does, yeah.
That's with Cold Chisel.
So,
so Kenty, so he can't sing that without Cold Chisel?
Yeah, he can.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to see him do a few of these acoustic gigs where he
Acoustic.
acoustic gig. Acoustic.
Acoustic
Wow.
brew. He does, eh, cuz?
I saw Barking Spiders play a couple of years back.
Oh, yeah.
And he came out with these big white Barking Spiders. For people who don't know, that was Cold Chisel's second. What was it? They the pseudonym that they used to perform on. So when they were bringing out a new album, they wanted to test a few songs. They used to play and bill themselves as Barking Spiders and play at pubs and clubs around Sydney. So when they announced themselves at the end, Barking Spiders at the Enmore, everyone like tickets were like hotcakes. But anyway, Ian Moss comes out. It looked like he was about to walk on the moon. He had these big white shoes on with these big thick soles on them, and like it was so stark on the stage that your eyes just kept getting drawn back, and people were actually sort of saying, "What about his shoes?"
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like they were just so brand new and white, they just glowed. You know? It was like, that's the memory of that night. His shoes. I've got a great Ian Moss story if you want to hear it.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, love to.
So a bloke I know had a birthday party down in Cronulla Way.
Right.
And so he had the birthday, and his next door neighbour was Matt Rogers. So he's knocked on his door and he said to Matt, mate, I'm having my birthday party this week. I want you to come over. This is sometime. He said, mate, you want to bring your old man, Steve Rogers? He said, mate, more than welcome. He said, Ian Moss is going to be playing. So anyway, the party gets started. Ian Moss is sitting there playing his guitar and all the rest of it. And at some point, Steve Rogers turns up. And he couldn't tell you, the Prince of Centres, but couldn't tell you a musician to save himself. So he's walked in and he hears Ian Moss singing and he yells out, Swanee! as a big cheer. So Ian Moss stops playing, calls my mate over who's having the party and said, listen, mate, that bloke over there just called me Swanee. And he said, oh, mate, look, sorry, mate. He said he's a rugby league legend, but he knows nothing about music. He said, well, mate, look, I'm just telling you, if he says it again, I'm done. He said, no, he won't say it again. He said, I'll talk to him. So he goes over and he says, Slades, listen, mate. He said, that's not Swanee. Swanee's Jimmy Barnes' cousin. This is Ian Moss, who plays with Jimmy Barnes in Cold Chisel. He said, oh, mate, sorry, I didn't realise. And he said, yeah, not a problem. He said, just, he's obviously upset him, but don't worry about it. So he said, righto. So anyway, that's it. Party's kicking along. It's all going well. And then Moss jumps into Tucker's daughter and Sludge turned around and went, Swanee! Mate, not another note got played. The guitar went down, went in the guitar case, up and walked out.
Fair dinkum he went. Wow.
Mate, everyone's like, Sludge, what have you done? He said, what have I done? What do you mean? What have I done? Oh, he was a champion, Steve Rogers. One of the great men.
Oh, that's gold. Well, he's good to his word there.
Yeah, good to his word. Grand final, do not yell out Swanee.
Yes.
So what's your code word, Maroon, so we can you not say another word?
Acoustic.
Acoustic.
All right. Now, also we'll be playing the name on everyone's lips at the moment, Stafford Brothers. Yeah. I've got to say, I've never heard of them before.
No, they're good fellas. They normally play at Magic.
Good fellas. Sounds like a woman.
And get
they're just playing the Wheels
DJs,
of Steel.
Yeah.
Oh, they're DJs.
DJs,
The Stafford Brothers are just on the Wheels of Steel.
Oh, okay.
Doing the mixing and the...
You jump on the wheels of steel down at Little Bay sometimes, don't you?
I do, just for the people in our street. Yes, I do. I get the glow sticks out and,
And the lollipop in the mouth.
Yeah, all that.
And the mesh singlet on.
Looking at my eyelids and...
with the fanny pack just there.
Yeah. And most importantly, though, everybody, who is going to be there? Timmy Trumpet.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, well, that's apparently Timmy Trumpet.
I hope he's got more than this.
No, that's all he's got.
Timmy
Oh, yeah, I've
Trumpet
heard this
goes
one
on.
at the gym. The bass and the speaker.
Oh, is this going to start in the House of Almost Pain, does it?
It does, yeah. I think I went to a dance party once and it was on. Yeah. I remember that was the night I was in my motorcycle cop outfit. Anyway, boys, we'll leave it there. We'll see you on NRL 360, Paul.
Yes, you will.
James Graham's going to join us shortly as Triple M rocks the footy. Welcome, everybody. And, of course, we're 1 week to the grand final. Rabbitohs taking on Penrith. And this show is brought to you by Sea-Doo. Discover why it's Australia's #1 choice in personal watercraft. We love the Sea-Doo. Want to keep them on board because we love those guys. We love the old Sea-Doo. It's James Triceps Hooper, Gordon, Tallis, Maroon, and joining us for the last hour, the great James Graham. How are you, Jimmy?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Good afternoon. Good to be here again.
Another week of COVID lockdown with the kiddies. What have you done to entertain the kids this week?
We've been on a couple of bushwalks, and that is about it. I think I know every trail in the local area. So, becoming an expert in survival and how to trail. So, very good.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully by October 11 we start sort of fanning away from all of this, but that's probably a chat for later on.
I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually missing schoolwork for them.
Oh, yeah, right.
Our eldest who's in kindergarten, because they're on school holidays, it's a bit like, well, you know, they've not sent any work home. It's like, well, now we really have to entertain them, don't we? So, challenging, but we're doing okay.
But do you have a big backyard?
Moderate.
Because I know my youngest, Jimmy James, when he was growing up, we had a big backyard. We used to live in another joint, and we'd get out there and play footy, and he'd like to pretend he was Billy Slater, you know, and I'd just run around with him for an hour or two, mate. Then he'd cark it. He'd just crash out on the lounge.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, that's what the bushwalks do. For the two little ones that completely cream crackered after it. So yeah.
I'm only asking you this, mate, to give Hoops some ideas on what to do with his kids, because he's just leaving them on the lounge, mate, aren't you?
No, mate. You got to get them out and about.
Yeah.
You got to get them out and about. We've been doing a lot of bike rides over the Anzac Bridge, around the fish markets, around the Glebe foreshore, all that sort of thing. The local parks, copper hammering. Get the footy out, get the student down there.
Yeah. Little bloke across the road from me, Tom Keane, he's 7. He's broke his jaw in the school holidays, and now he tells me he's got to have pureed food for a month.
How did he do it?
Well, he was riding the BMX or the scooter or something, came off.
Right.
So wear your helmets, kids. Wear your helmets.
What would your go-to puree food be?
Oh, you couldn't puree a kebab.
No.
Huh?
No, you couldn't. That is true.
Yeah. What would you suggest? Some
a sahi bowl.
Sahi bowl.
They're good. The sort of
they're healthy.
Yeah.
Blueberry or whatever in there.
Yeah, well,
probably go with that for breakfast. Porridge.
No, but we're talking about pureeing a proper meal, like, you know.
Are you going to throw your kebab in the blender?
Yeah, throw a kebab in, or a Big Mac.
Oh,
you know, or a T-bone, something like that. You know,
isn't there a show? Does it blend?
There is a show.
Yeah, does it blend? Yeah.
Drop a part of your anatomy in and see. But anyway, let's talk about yesterday's game. Melbourne Storm and Penrith. How did you see it, Jimmy Graham?
Oh, mate, it was another great finals game. Isn't it crazy what sport can do to you? A grown adult, and I'm standing up. Like, why do I stand up? Like, isn't it weird that it makes you do that? When it starts to get exciting, you just raise and you're just standing in anticipation of what could happen next. But, so many talking points. Such a great game of football. Two teams that were obviously so desperate to win, and it meant so much to them. That first try from Penrith, like, wow.
Yeah.
What a play. I think, for me, the way the Penrith team celebrated that try, it looked like it was cooked on the training ground. And they saw something in Melbourne. Obviously, they like to jam on that try line, almost go early, really stop the ball, get into the edge. And obviously the execution is incredibly difficult to be able to do that, but it looked like something they'd planned to say, if we're in this position, we'll take Appy will take a scoot. We'll get them if they're short for numbers, because Cleary actually sprinted across two players to get to dummy half in order to put the kick in. It was, and you could just see what it meant. The 18th and 19th man who were ball boys, they were jumping over Crichton, I think it was. So, great play. And what about the start from Penrith as well? Pangai Jr. didn't get too many minutes, but he really came to play. I really liked the start of Penrith, that intention to really take it to the Melbourne Storm forwards. And obviously, them losing Christian Welsh and Brandon Smith really didn't help their cause, but they hung on in there. They found a way. They still created opportunities. And, in that last sort of 10 minutes, Penrith were clinging on for dear life. And, it was strange. They almost stopped playing a little bit. There was a scrum play that they had, and their best attacking player, in my opinion, Jerome Luai, actually packed in the back row, which I thought was strange. And I just thought, oh no, they're gonna stop playing here, and Melbourne are going to do a Melbourne and pluck this out of nowhere and come back. But yeah, I think you've got to give a credit to all 34 players and the 2 coaches for the entertainment that they put on. It was, at half time, you just didn't want it to stop. Some of the desperation, that Scott Sorensen chase back, like, wow. I think, if you look at that moment and you think the difference between going in at half time from 6-0 to potentially 6-6 or 6-4, what a big play from him. And there was just so many moments. Capewell, there was a moment he was in at marker and they nearly got stretched and he just ties in and he makes the tackle on Pappenhausen. It was brilliant to watch. It really was. It was a sensational game, and credit to all 34 players and the 2 coaches that were in the coaches box. It was a great advert for our sport.
Yeah,
it was edge
and
of
I
the
don't normally
seat
miss
stuff.
and I don't normally miss opportunities. Jennings drops the ball with the line open, and that's pressure.
Yeah.
So Melbourne were feeling pressure because of the way Penrith were defending, and I just wish when Dale Finucane runs that decoy and Big Nelson and Sofa Solomona comes off the field, and he's fresh, his first carry, he knocks him over, then he hits that ball 5 minutes. I just would have loved to have seen whether they could have stopped him, because that would have been courage, and he just ends up jumping over, but he got taken out. If Sorensen doesn't get taken out of there, I tell you what, he's got to bite down on the mouthguard to even try to stop him.
Yeah, even if Dale just tempos his run a little bit, you think,
he
Big
didn't
Nelson,
even need to run a decoy.
He really didn't, did he?
Need to run a decoy.
But that happens sometimes. And, Big Nelson was impressive off the bench. Like, geez, he is one hell of a player to bring on. Like, when you're in the trenches and you're working as hard as Penrith did, and then bang, after 20 minutes or whatever it was, he comes on like, oh, cheers, thanks for this. So, but yeah, it was interesting to see Bellamy after the game as well. He saying that he can't be critical of his team, and I thought, it was refreshing to hear him that way. And obviously the journey that they've been on for the 2 years, and credit to him. And I think obviously, most of them have been away from Melbourne for 2 years, and for him to, even though this back-to-back premierships was on the line, for him to go into that mode publicly, especially, credit to him for doing that when the performance wasn't up to Melbourne standard. The errors weren't up to Melbourne standard that we've come accustomed to. But credit to him for speaking so positively about the journey that they've been on as a group.
They'll be ruining some of those missed opportunities that Gordie touched on earlier. And as much as Craig was stoic and terrific the way that he handled the media last night, I think in the fullness of time, and when they do debrief on the game, because it's Melbourne and because of the success that they have had, they'll see it as a missed opportunity. They were red-hot favourites to make another grand final, and no doubt that forensically over the summer they'll go through where they need to get better.
Yeah, even that hoops as well. Hughes kicking it out on the full. I know Cleary got one as well, but it's just...
Well, they made 15 errors in total for the game, which is very un-Melbourne-like.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, looking back, when was the last time they actually made so many errors. There were some things that you don't see the Melbourne team do. Yep. You really don't.
Didn't you think, James, that when Christian Welch, he was out, he was off, he was gone, and then Brandon Smith, were you thinking, well, they're gone here, or were you thinking, no, they can come back and win this?
You never, ever, ever write off the Melbourne Storm. And obviously losing 2 quality players and the effect of the interchange that it would have had, I imagine most coaches going with an interchange plan and a bit of a backup plan should you lose 1 or 2, but it's not the desired situation by any stretch. But yeah, credit to them for hanging on in there. And really, if you're looking at that game and you're in the sort of the 70th minute when Pappenhausen scores the try, and you go, well, which team would you rather be now at 10-6? I think I'd rather be Melbourne coming home, but credit to Penrith, they just did enough to hang in there. And yeah, I was never ever comfortable. If you're a Penrith fan, you weren't comfortable until that final hooter went and the ball was dead and Penrith were off and celebrating.
Losing Welsh was massive at that stage of the game because, as we've seen over the course of the last couple of seasons, he does a terrific job at trying to nullify Nathan Cleary's influence in terms of his kicking game. And so that really did upset Melbourne's rhythm in terms of they would have gone in with a clear plan to try and limit Nathan's time with the ball. But losing Welsh was big, and then Smith off the back of it as well. You know, it's very hard in a game of that magnitude to suffer losses to those quality of players.
Because that's what I was going to say, fellas. Like you blokes, obviously, James or Gordie, for you blokes that have been out there, when you know you've lost two key players, you're down to 15 players. Maybe it rattled Melbourne a bit. Maybe that's where a lot of the errors come from.
Yeah, potentially. And also, if you're one of those middle forwards, automatically when you see a guy, two middle forwards go down and a guy like Welsh that plays big minutes and a guy like Brandon Smith that plays big minutes, you know automatically, not only are you going to have to take over their assignments, like the kick pressure on Cleary, but also, which require a huge amount of effort and energy and take a lot of your petrol tank, but also you're going to have to play longer. So your stints are going to go longer. So you're in two minds. It's like, do I take over Welsh's responsibility of being the kick pressure guy? But also, I'm going to have to conserve my energy here because instead of playing 20 minutes, I've now got to do 30. So it's a sort of catch-22. What do you do? Do you take over his assignment, or you save your energy because you know you're going to have to go longer than you've normally done or what you've normally expected to do?
But I reckon that's the coach's fault these days because, you know, they should just be playing, Jimmy. If I'm coaching you, I say, mate, let me know how your gas is going. Why pull you off at, because now at the 20-minute mark, we've got to do this because of their control of the game that, coaches want to always be in full control and think, oh, well, this here and, we pull him off at the 20-minute mark and we want fresh people on. I would be letting my players go for as long as they can and they let me know for that moment and then when you need them down the track, and Jimmy mightn't have, and the game might be going pretty good and, you feel like your tank's full and you think you can play the first 40 minutes. Then you have a break at half time and he says, mate, keep on going. I don't get changing someone for the sake of changing someone.
No, I agree with you, Gordon, and no doubt a lot of teams would do that. And with certain forwards, you can do. You can have them. Look, you tell me, I've had that relationship with certain coaches before where it's like, no, you let me know when you're gone and we'll get you off. So it could be anywhere between the 20-minute mark. It could be half time. You just let me know. And I think with certain forwards, you can do that. But if you look at a guy like Nelson, the big guy is going out of the game. But what Melbourne do so well is that we can accommodate him because we've got so many workers around him. So a guy like Nelson, you do need people around him for him to be as effective as he is. And I just feel like, it was a credit to Melbourne to stay in the contest, losing two middle forwards like they did. Like when you look at that situation, they'd never look at it as an excuse, but it was a tremendous effort for them to stay in the fight and still be only 4 points away on the 79th minute mark.
Welcome back. Before we take off at 4 o'clock, the boys will have a preview of who they think will win the NRL Grand Final and why. Right now we'll do this. And thanks to Apricity Finance, turn your workflow into cash flow with an invoice finance facility from Apricity Finance. 1300 APRICITY. Here is the Raging Bull.
My Raging Bull this week, it was sort of running, and there's not a lot around at the moment, Anthony, because there's obviously two teams left. But mine's about, I don't know how Wayne Bennett keeps on conning the media.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a master at it. And straight after they have a victory, going to a grand final when I never thought South was going to get there, with all the history with, if you lose by 50, you don't win. And halfway through the year, well, I thought South Sydney were probably out of the race, and it was down to maybe two or three sides. And then straight after they win, he starts talking about his exit from the Broncos.
Yeah.
And he's just a master. And then all week, it's not going to be about the game. It's going to be about, poor Wayne Bennett and what the Broncos did. And I just don't get how the media keep on taking his dummies and his sucker and not asking him, has Cody got the monkey off his back? What about Latrell Mitchell? Do your forwards have it to beat Penrith? They just get mesmerised. There's no footy questions getting thrown about Wayne Bennett that he's got to answer to put pressure on him. He is going to play him off a break again this week. It'll all be about Wayne. It'll be about the Broncos. It'll be about Palmy. It'll be about his next coaching job. It'll be about something else. It'll be about Benji Marshall, someone that can handle it. And he is a master at it. He's been doing it for, I'd say, 20 years at least, to the high level that he does do it. And I just don't know how they don't pull him up on it. Hoops, you're a journalist that has sat there, and I'm sure you would have asked Wayne 1,000 questions in your time. How does he keep on snookering you guys?
Well, as you pointed out, Gordon, he plays the public relations game better than anybody. Wayne's a genius at how to handle the media. He knows how to bowl flippers, throw off, take the attention and the pressure away from his side in a big game and make it more about him and something else that he is a road that he's happy to go down. So he's a genius at doing it.
Yeah, but the Broncos, that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I must say, I was surprised when those questions were all getting raised.
And he left it, and they swapped coaches, and he walked into arguably a better roster, and then obviously Sam and GI and all that have to retire. But he was going to a pretty good roster.
Yes.
You know, and a side that was there, and he had to rebuild a little bit, and he got Jai Arrow and got a few other younger guys there to fill Sam's role, and but he still does it. He brings up something that happened 3 years ago, and that's the headline.
I think that's it, though, Gordie. Like, most people look at what he said yesterday and was like, oh, look at him. He just can't help but give Brisbane Broncos a little jab. Like, you know? And that's the headline. And it is, mate. It is so smart because we know about the pressure. And we know that players will read every newspaper and every column that's going on this week. They can't avoid it. It's all over social media. But that will be what they read. And it's genius that they'll read about their coach, and it's not about the things that you mentioned. It's genius, mate. It really is. And
the first question asked Ivan Cleary, "Oh, mate, what is it? You're taking on Wayne Bennett this week?"
Yeah,
they ask him about Wayne. It's a circus, but I love it because it just keeps on entertaining me.
And here he is, one win away from another. And what is this? His 10th grand final appearance, I think.
Oh, is it?
It's amazing, isn't it?
So the Raiders in 87.
Yeah, and then
Broncos
92, 93, 98,
Dragons.
97.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, well, hang on. 87, 92, 93, 97, 98.
That's 8.
2010 and 2015.
Rocket Industry should have done your homework.
Mate,
you
could
6 grand finals with the Broncos, isn't it? Or have they played 7? How many have Brisbane played?
Well, he's 2015. He was at Brisbane as well.
We've sent this to the Trivia Tribunal over in Geneva.
Guys,
right?
I could listen. He's put me on the spot here. I could work it out. 87 Canberra, 92 Brisbane, 93 Brisbane, 97 Brisbane, 98 Brisbane, 2000 Brisbane, 2006 Brisbane, 2010 Dragons, 2015 Brisbane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10.
This is his 10th. Well done, Anthony.
There you go.
That should have been a trivia question.
That should be in trivia now.
See, mate, that's why you're the trivia
There's
master.
no trivia, mate. There's COVID going on, all right? So you've offended me.
Hang on, aren't you on FaceTime Messenger?
Oh, that's raffles. That's raffles. Raffles. Boys, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to ask you blokes who wins the grand final and why. We're going to ask the boys about who they think will win the NRL Grand Final. That's James Graham, James Hooper and Gordon Tallis shortly. But last night on the Gold Coast, young Warriors player Reece Walsh was arrested by police on the Gold Coast. Reece Walsh has since made this statement, quote, "I was told by officers last night to move on. I didn't move on, which led to me getting arrested and taken back to the police station. Once I got back to the police station, I was searched and I was in possession of a small bag of cocaine, which I had some of during the night. No one else was involved in this. This is solely on me. I should never have done it. It's a mistake that I've made, and I'm aware of that. I'm remorseful and should never have done it." That's the latest on the Reece Walsh thing. I guess you guys will have the latest on that tomorrow night on Fox League Hoops.
Yep, we always cover all the news, Anthony, so yep.
Okay, boys, let's talk about the grand final. I'll start with you, James, because you haven't had your say yet. Penrith going into this game, slight favourites. Who do you like for the NRL grand final?
Yeah, I hate to do this to South Sydney fans again, but I think I'm going to back Penrith in this one. I think the journey that they've been on the last 2 years, the motivation of and the hate that they experienced last year in the grand final, so close. but yet so far, I think we really saw that in their performance yesterday. Look, I know they've had 240 minutes of incredibly intense rugby league football without a break, without any respite, with the tension that they've been under. I think the story of Cleary, father and son, that's a big one. And I just think Penrith's motivation will just get them over the line. I think they've got some points in them, as do South Sydney. But I just feel that if you're going to split them, I'm going to go with Penrith.
Okay. Hoops, and James Graham just touched on it. Going to this game, they've had some hard games to get them to this point, Penrith.
The Panthers, absolutely. Look, that defensive performance yesterday, the way they scrambled for one another, and to be able to hold the Melbourne Storm to the scoreline that they did is a reflection of just what a committed side they are at this point in time. I think Jimmy was spot on in terms of clearly there was some scar tissue from last season and the fact that they were in the big dance, but they couldn't get the job done against the Storm. To beat them up there yesterday, it definitely, the advantage is tipped in the Panthers' favour at the moment, I think. But the genius of Wayne and what he'll be able to orchestrate out of the Bunnies may well be enough to get Souths the result as well.
I think, look, it's an obvious thing to say, but it's hard to do. You've got to start well. And that's what Penrith did this time against Melbourne.
And that's where Melbourne started.
And that's where Melbourne got them last time. And that's also where South Sydney got them a couple of weeks ago in that first finals game. Penrith were an awful start. They were so ill-disciplined. They had to expend so much energy early on in the piece. In the first 5 minutes, they gave away 2 6-agains on tackle 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So they've learned. What yesterday appeared to show is that they've learned from that. And they know they've got to start well, and they'll be talking about that. And then they'll be talking about, okay, well then Badgers and Arrow come on. So we're going to have to handle that. So the plan will be there, but no doubt they have got to go. They've got to give everything into that start. They really did. And, it'll be interesting to see if Leota's back. And if he is, will they keep Pangai Jr. there to start and because I think he only played 10 minutes at the start of the game, maybe before he came off. I think that's it'd be hard to put Leota onto the bench, but what the start from Pangai Jr., just say, mate, just go out there for 10 minutes and just go crazy. It's not a bad tactic.
Okay, we've got both James Graham and Hoops going Penrith. What about you, Gordie?
Look, it's a tough one. I watched James Fisher-Harris limp around. He hurt his knee in the first tackle of the game, the big collision with Christian Walsh, and then he chases when Jerome Hughes makes that break, and he falls over, with no one around him. And coming out after half-time, it looked like he had a bindi in his foot. He was limping. He just couldn't get his knee warm. No, mate, and it was brave. So he was just running, and you could see the pain. And he's a tough guy. You didn't see it on his face. You could see it in his body. So he's going to have to get right. Pangai Jr. limped off. Pangai Jr. hurt his knee when they scored that try. He had strapping like Farlap. Brian Toto looked like he had a work boot on. That's how much strapping was on. So I think there's a few Penrith boys that are injured. It's how busted they are. They've had a couple of really tough weeks in South Sydney. They have just surprised me every week. And Wayne Bennett is a defensive coach, and this has been a defensive final series. It's been just throw the baby out with the bathwater. 55 tackles Penrith missed. That wasn't game plan. They just kept on turning up for each other. Some of those tackles, they're just going just in case they're needed. And I think it's a bit like Jimmy. It's going to come down to the start. Who has the ball? And I know it sounds simple and you can't explain it, but it's when you got the momentum and turning the pressure into points. And South Sydney are really good at that. I think South Sydney have a lot of points in them. If there was a percentage, I'd say Penrith maybe. Penrith maybe 55% to 45%, but it's a cracking.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
You nearly turned me there, Gordie. You nearly turned me, man. I thought you were going to go with South.
Now.
I know. I thought he was going to go with South, and you convinced me. You nearly convinced me.
All right,
that's how
boys.
I got my wife too, Jimmy.
That's just a dear idea.
What are you going to do, mate?
We'll catch you on Fox League through the week, and we'll catch you next Sunday on Triple M. And
absolutely, can't wait. Grand final week.
You'll have a heavy role next week too, James Graham. Heavy roll, and in off the interchange bench today, and we'll see you again next Sunday.
Look forward to it, mate.
Now, you don't have the big league wrap tonight, mate, but you're back on Fox League tomorrow.
Yes, Anthony.
All
finish
right.
for the season there, Big Leg Wrap.
We'll be back next week with our grand final special. And, of course, Dan will call the grand final for you. Get on board a Sea-Doo and discover why it's Australia's #1 choice in personal watercraft. Looking for an escape or an adventure? No passport, no worries. They look after the Sunday sin bin. The guys and girls at Sea-Doo as Triple M rocks the grand final next week.